anyone unwilling to work should not eat. Oh, sweet music to the ears of everybody who is absolutely annoyed by the endless litany of biblical admonitions and laws and prescriptions that say that you have to share your stuff. Those prescriptions sound so counterintuitive for a capitalist society that is based on competition and on hard work, and that you make your own choices. And when your choices are bad, then you land in the gutter. And now you want a piece of my stuff? Why are you not more like I am? Why do you not make the choices I made? If you were more like I am and made the choices I make, you would have enough stuff and you wouldn't need to ask me to share my stuff with you. I don't like to share my stuff with people who make bad choices, and that is why this verse is music in my ear. You should not eat if you do not work. I love it. The Bible is a very, very practical book. Except when it writes stuff like that. John 3:11 reads, "Whoever has 2 coats must share with anyone who has none. And whoever has food must do likewise." Oh. This verse doesn't distinguish between working and not working, between people who are worthy of food and people who are not. Big bummer. But to avoid the obvious tension this creates with the values of our society, these verses need to be interpreted. It needs to be qualified, it needs to be put into context, or the easiest solutions of all, it needs to be ignored. If you don't quote it, it isn't there. However, this verse, "anyone unwilling to work should not eat," what could be clearer than this verse? It merits the preface. The Bible clearly states that anyone unwilling to work should not eat. And let's apply some common sense for a moment. This is a verse that finally says as things are. When we help the poor, then we only create a culture of dependency, and the poor forget how to take care of themselves. So if we don't take care of them, they will have to, and so everything will be beneficial for us all. We don't have to share our stuff, and the poor become productive members of society. All it takes is a decision to work hard, work even harder and harder and harder. Work makes you free. In German, Arbeit macht frei. That is a sentence that the Germans cast into a steel gate and hung it above their Auschwitz concentration camp. And that sentence was programmatic in its cruel consequence. Work makes you free. If you didn't work in Auschwitz, you didn't eat. And the Nazis didn't quote the Bible often, but that is a verse they loved. That confirmed their social Darwinist view of humanity. Justification of their own egoism, their own self-centered obsessions have always fueled the fires of biblical exegesis. But if you actually read the whole text, instead of ripping tiny bits out and putting them out of context so that they confirm your preconceived notions, those self-serving ideas die a rather unceremonious death on the field of rigorous inquiry. Of course, the poor are the first to come to mind if you read a quote like that. The welfare queens, the lazy bums that rely on handouts and entitlement programs, or Schrödinger's immigrants who simultaneously take away your job and suck the welfare system dry. If they don't work, why should we feed them? But the text actually doesn't say anything about the poor. What about the rich? Those who don't work because they have inherited enough money. Are they supposed to work or not? Letting your money work means that you are not doing actually any work yourself. And the Bible prohibits taking interest on loans. And scholars do not agree about who wrote this text. Many think it was written after Paul's death in his name. However that might be, the text is firmly located in the cultural context of the Roman Greco world. The Roman ideal of freedom does not correlate with what Americans consider it means to be free. Truly free is only that Roman who does not need to work, because that Roman rules over others and is able to exploit the fruits of their labor. When Paul and his fellow missionaries came into the city to spread the gospel, they were entitled to be fed and housed by the church they founded. That is a custom of their time, and that is codified in extra-biblical literature. But they did not insist on that right because they didn't have to. They could work, and so that's what they did. Frank L. Crouch writes, Paul is not trying to establish a social services policy for the city of Thessalonica. He is trying to establish a do good for others even if you don't have to ethic among those who seek to follow Christ. When he came to town, he did not have to work. He had the right as an apostle not to work, but because he could work and contribute to the good of the whole, he did. And in doing this, he denies the Roman ideal of freedom that is based on exploitation. The very act of exploiting reinforces the Roman worldview that knows only power over powerlessness as a guiding principle. To rule, to dominate, to devastate, that are the values that shape the Roman society. Slaves work, and able-bodied Romans are idle and rely on the dole, a public handout for their living. In the circuses, the people die for the amusement of the masses who have nothing to do because they don't work. In politics, the patricians dominate the plebeians. The rich exploit the poor. Men govern women and their households where the power of the paterfamilias is absolute. At every corner, Romans reenact those fundamental principles that guides their society. And when Paul, who is a Roman citizen, comes to town, Roman morals would compel him to dominate his congregation and exploit their hospitality as a visible sign of his rank and of his dominance over them. But he works because the church is guided by a different set of morals that is based on God's love and grace. The Christians in Thessalonica are poor and they suffer for Christ by enduring persecution. Why should Paul increase their burden? He loves them. He wants them to prosper. Exploitation is what this verse refers to. Christians who love their sisters and brothers do not burden them if they don't have to. But if they ask for help, if they have to ask for help, then they ask for help and they receive help if that help is needed. The truth will set you free. And the truth is that sometimes people exploit the hands that help them. Some people are lazy, complacent, or simply stupid. Enduring them is a cost of having compassion with those in need. We don't close our hearts to those in need just because some are out to game us. Americans generally do not want handouts. Coming from Europe, I see that, and I see that as one of the most distinguishing and lovable characteristics of the American people. What people want and what people need is a fair shot. This country truly believes in pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, but sometimes people do not have boots. And in those cases, we are called to provide boots. And Americans are also extremely generous and understand that things can go wrong. Because this truly, and I come from Europe and I see that this truly is a society of entrepreneurs and risk takers. Everybody gets that risk-taking, social change and personal challenges sometimes lead to difficult results and to difficult times. Do not be afraid and do not be ashamed when your status changes from donating to the food bank to having to use it. People can be hopeful in this country that sometimes in the future they will be able to donate again. Genuine generosity is also very, very special about this country. The more disturbing is it when selfish noise drowns out the true heart of this wonderful country. Amen.